At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan: Pray teach me about making an assertion and refuting it, so that I and other bodhisattvas, getting rid of erroneous views that may rise from assertion and refutation, may at once realize supreme enlightenment. Having been enlightened, they would keep themselves away from the eternalistic assertions as well as from the nihilistic refutations, and leave your enlightenment eye unrefuted. Then the Bhagavan again, understanding the request of Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, recited this verse. Assertions and refutations are not to be found in the mind only. The ignorant who understand not that the mind is seen in the form of body, property, and abode, wander about with assertions and refutations. At that moment the Bhagavan said this to elucidate the meaning of this verse. Mahamati, there are 4 forms of assertion made concerning things not in existence. What are the 4? The assertion about individual marks that are non-existent, the assertion about philosophical views which are non-existent, i.e. not true, the assertion about a cause which is non-existent, and 4. The assertion about objects that are non-existent. These, Mahamati, are the 4 assertions. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the refutation? It means not examining properly, because of ignorance, any assertions based on errors. This, Mahamati, is what characterizes assertion and refutation. Further, Mahamati, what are the characteristics of the assertion made about individual marks that have no existence? It concerns the marks of individuality and generality in the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, which do not really exist. But taking them for realities and getting attached to them, a man may affirm that they are just so and not otherwise. This, Mahamati, characterizes the assertion of individual marks which are non-existent. This assertion and discrimination, Mahamati, concerning individual marks that are not existent, rises from one's attachment to the habit energy which is amassed since beginningless time by varieties of erroneous views issuing from false imagination. This, Mahamati, characterizes the assertion of individual marks which are non-existent. Again, Mahamati, by the assertion of philosophical views which are non-existent, i.e. not true, is meant that in the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, some philosophers assume the existence of an ego, a being, a soul, a living being, a nourisher, or a spirit. This is said, Mahamati, to be the assertion of some philosophical views which are non-existent, i.e. not true. Again, Mahamati, by the assertion of a cause that is non-existent, is meant that some philosophers assume the causeless birth of a first vijnana, which later comes to have a Maya-like non-existence. That is to say, the originally unborn vijnana begins to function under the conditions of I, form, light, and memory. The functioning goes on for a while and then ceases. This, Mahamati, is the assertion of a cause that is non-existent. Again, Mahamati, the assertion about objects that are non-existent is an assertion about rising from the attachment to such non-working existences as space, cessation, and nirvana. These, Mahamati, are neither existent nor non-existent. For all things are devoid of all the alternatives of being and non-being, and are to be known, Mahamati, as the horns of a hare, a horse, or a camel, or like a hairnet. They are discriminated as realities by the ignorant who are addicted to assertions and refutations, as their intelligence has not penetrated into the truth that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself. It is otherwise with the wise. This, Mahamati, is the characteristic point of the assertion about objects which are non-existent. For this reason, Mahamati, one should avoid the views based on assertion and refutation. Further, Mahamati, the bodhisattvas who are thoroughly acquainted with the nature of the Sita, Manas, and Mano Vijnana, of the 5 dharmas, of the 3 svabhas, and of the twofold egolessness, will assume various personalities for the sake of benefiting others, just like the imagination that evolves from the seat of the relativity knowledge, and again like the mysterious gem that reflects varieties of colors. Going over to all the Buddha lands and assemblages, the bodhisattvas will listen to the Buddhas, discourse on the nature of all things, which are like a vision, a dream, an illusion, a reflection, and the lunar vision in water, and which have nothing to do with birth and death, eternality and extinction. The bodhisattvas, thus facing the Tathagatas, will listen to their discourses on the truth that does not belong to the Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha vehicle. They will then attain 100,000 samadhis, indeed 100,000 niyutas of kotis of samadhis, and by means of these samadhis they will go around from one country to another. They will do homage to the Buddhas, be born in all celestial mansions, where they will discourse on the triple treasure, manifesting Buddha bodies, and surrounded by Sravakas and Bodhisattvas, they will, in order to free them from the alternatives of being and non-being, instruct them to understand thoroughly what is meant by an objective world, which is nothing but mind itself, and in which there are no realities. At that time the Bhagavan recited this verse. When those who are born of the Buddha see that the world is no more than mind itself, they will obtain a body of transformation, which has nothing to do with effect of producing works, but which is endowed with the powers, psychic faculties, and self-control. At that time again Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, made a request of the Bhagavan. Tell me, Bhagavan, how all things are empty, unborn, non-dual, and have no self-nature, so that I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas might be awakened in the teaching of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and the absence of self-nature, and, quitting the discrimination of being and non-being, quickly realize the highest enlightenment. Then the Bhagavan said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Now, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well upon what I tell you. Replied Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, I will indeed, Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said, Emptiness, emptiness indeed. Mahamati, it is a term whose self-nature is false imagination. Because of one's attachment to false imagination, Mahamati, we have to talk of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and the absence of self-nature. In short, then, Mahamati, there are 7 kinds of emptiness. The emptiness of individual marks, lakshana, the emptiness of self-nature, bhava savava, the emptiness of no work, aprakarita, the emptiness of work, prakarita, the emptiness of all things in the sense that they are unpredictable, nirabilapya, the emptiness in its highest sense of ultimate reality realizable only by noble wisdom, and 7, the emptiness of mutuality, itaretara, which is the 7th. Mahamati, what then is the emptiness of individual marks? It is that all things have no such distinguishing marks of individuality and generality. In consideration of mutuality and accumulation, things are thought to be realities, but when they are further investigated and analyzed, Mahamati, they are non-existent, and not predicable with individuality and generality. And because thus no such ideas as self, other, or both hold good, Mahamati, the individual marks no longer obtain. So it is said that all things are empty as to their self-marks. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of self-nature? Mahamati, it is that all things in their self-nature are unborn, hence the emptiness of self-nature, and it is therefore said that things are empty in their self-nature. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of no work? It is that the skandhas are nirvana itself, and there is no work doing in them from the beginning. Therefore one speaks of the emptiness of no work. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of work? It is that the skandhas are devoid of an ego and its belongings, and go on functioning when there is a mutual conjunction of cause and action. Thus one speaks of the emptiness of work. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of all things in the sense that they are unpredicable? It is that the nature of the false imagination is not expressible. Hence the emptiness of all things in the sense of their unpredicability. Thus one speaks of the emptiness of unpredicability. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness in the highest sense of ultimate reality realized by noble wisdom? It is that in the attainment of an inner realization by means of noble wisdom there is no trace of habit energy generated by all the erroneous conceptions of beginningless past. Thus one speaks of the highest emptiness of ultimate reality, realizable by noble wisdom. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by the emptiness of mutual non-existence? It is this: when a thing is missing here, one speaks of it being empty there. For instance, Mahamati, in the lecture hall of the Mrigarama, there are no elephants, no bulls, no sheep, but as to the bhikshus, I can say that the hall is not devoid of them. It is empty only as far as they, i.e. the animals, are concerned. Furthermore, Mahamati, it is not that the lecture hall is devoid of its own characteristics, nor that the bhikshu is devoid of his bhikshuhood, nor that in some other places too elephants, bulls, and sheep are not to be found. Mahamati, here one sees all things in their aspect of individuality and generality, but from the point of view of mutuality, itaritara, some things do not exist somewhere. Thus one speaks of the emptiness of mutual non-existence. These, Mahamati, are the 7 kinds of emptiness, of which mutuality ranks the lowest of all and is to be put away by you. Again, Mahamati, not that things are not born, but that they are not born of themselves, except when seen in the state of samadhi. This is what is meant by all things are unborn. To have no self-nature is, according to the deeper sense, to be unborn, Mahamati. That all things are devoid of self-nature means that there is a constant and uninterrupted becoming, a momentary change from one state of existence to another. Seeing this, Mahamati, all things are destitute of self-nature, so one speaks of all things as having no self-nature. Again, Mahamati, what is meant by non-duality? It means that light and shade, long and dark, black and white are relative terms, Mahamati, and are not independent of each other. As nirvana and samsara are, all things are not two. There is no nirvana except where is samsara. There is no samsara except where there is nirvana. For the condition of existence is not of mutually exclusive character. Therefore it is said that all things are non-dual, as are nirvana and samsara. For this reason, Mahamati, you should discipline yourself in the realization of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and no self-nature. Then at that time the Bhagavan recited this couplet of verses. I always preach emptiness which is beyond eternalism and nihilism. Samsara is like a dream and a vision, and karma vanishes not. Space, nirvana, and the 2 forms of cessation. Thus the ignorant discriminate the things which are not effect-producing, but the wise stand above being and non-being. At that time again the Bhagavan said this to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva. This teaching of emptiness, no birth, non-duality, and no self-nature is found in all the sutras of all the Buddhas, and this doctrine is recognized in every one of them. However, Mahamati, the sutras are the teaching in conformity with the dispositions of all beings and deviate from the real sense, and not the truth-preserving statement. Mahamati, it is like unto the mirage which entices the deer with its treacherous springs. The springs are not there, but the deer are attached, imagining them to be real. So with the teachings disclosed in all the sutras, they are for all the beings for the gratification of their own discriminating minds. They are not the truth-preserving statements meant for noble wisdom to grasp. For this reason, Mahamati, be in conformity with the sense, and be not engrossed in the word teaching. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. Now the Bhagavan makes mention of the Tathagata Garbha in the sutras, and verily it is described by you as by nature bright and pure, as primarily unspotted, endowed with the 32 marks of excellence, hidden in the body of every being like a gem of great value, which is enwrapped in a dirty garment, enveloped in the garment of the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, and soiled with the dirt of greed, anger, folly, and false imagination. While it is described by the Bhagavan to be eternal, permanent, auspicious, and unchangeable, is not this Tathagata Garbha taught by the Bhagavan the same as the ego substance taught by the philosophers? The ego, as taught in the systems of the philosophers, is an eternal creator, unqualified, omnipresent, and imperishable. The Bhagavan replied, No, Mahamati, my Tathagata Garbha is not the same as the ego taught by the philosophers. For what the Tathagatas teach is the Tathagata Garbha in the sense, Mahamati, that it is emptiness, reality limit, nirvana, being unborn, unqualified, and devoid of will effort. The reason why the Tathagatas, who are arhats and fully enlightened ones, teach the doctrine pointing to the Tathagata Garbha is to make the ignorant cast aside their fear when they listen to the teaching of egolessness, and to have them realize the state of non-discrimination and imagelessness. I also wish, Mahamati, that the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas of the present and future would not attach themselves to the idea of an ego, imagining it to be a soul. Mahamati, it is like a potter who manufactures various vessels out of a mass of clay of one sort by his own manual skill and labor combined with a rod, water, and thread, Mahamati, that the Tathagatas preach the egolessness of things which removes all the traces of discrimination by various skillful means, issuing from their transcendental wisdom, that is, sometimes by the doctrine of the Tathagatagarbha, sometimes by that of egolessness, and like a potter by means of various terms, expressions, and synonyms. For this reason, Mahamati, the philosopher's doctrine of an ego substance is not the same as the teaching of the Tathagatagarbha. Thus, Mahamati, the doctrine of the Tathagatagarbha is disclosed in order to awaken the philosophers from their clinging to an idea of an ego, so that those minds that have fallen into the views imagining the non-existent ego as real, and also into the notion that the triple emancipation is final, may rapidly be awakened to the state of supreme enlightenment. Accordingly, Mahamati, the Tathagatas who are arhats and fully enlightened ones, disclose the doctrine of the Tathagatagarbha, which is thus not to be known as identical with the philosopher's notion of an ego substance. Therefore, Mahamati, in order to abandon the misconception cherished by the philosophers, you must strive after the teaching of egolessness and the Tathagatagarbha. At that moment, then, the Bhagavan recited this verse. The personal soul, continuity, the skandhas, causation, atoms, the supreme spirit, the ruler, the creator, they are discriminations in the mind only. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, in consideration of future generations, made this request again of the Bhagavan. Pray tell me, Bhagavan, about the perfecting of the discipline whereby the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas become great yogins. The Bhagavan replied, there are 4 things, Mahamati, by fulfilling which the Bodhisattvas become great yogins. What are the 4? They are to have a clear understanding as to what is seen of mind itself, to discard the notions of birth, abiding, and disappearance, to look into the truth that no external world obtains, and to seek for the attainment of inner realization by noble wisdom. Provided with these 4 things, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas become great yogins. How, Mahamati, does the Bodhisattva Mahasattva come to have a clear understanding as to what is seen of mind itself? He comes to it by recognizing that this triple world is nothing but mind itself, devoid of an ego and its belongings, with no strivings, no comings and goings, that this triple world is manifested and imagined as real, under the influence of the habit energy accumulated since beginningless time by false reasoning and imagination, and with the multiplicity of objects and actions in close relationship, and in conformity with the ideas of discrimination such as body, property, and abode. Thus, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, acquires a thoroughly clear understanding as to what is seen of mind itself. How again, Mahamati, does the Bodhisattva Mahasattva discard notions of birth, abiding, and disappearance? By this it is meant that all things are to be regarded as forms born of a vision or a dream, and have never been created, since there are no such things as self, the other, or bothness. The Bodhisattvas will see that the external world exists only in conformity with mind only, and seeing that there is no stirring of the Vijnanas, and that the triple world is a complicated network of causation, and owes its rise to discrimination, they find that all things, inner and external, are beyond predicability, that there is nothing to be seen as self-nature, and that the world is not to be viewed as born. And thereby they will conform themselves to the insight that things are of the nature of a vision, etc., and attain to the recognition that things are unborn. Establishing themselves on the 8th stage of bodhisattvahood, they will experience a revulsion in their consciousness by transcending the Sita, Manas, and Mano-Vijnana, and the 5 Dharmas, and the 3 Svabhas, and the twofold egolessness, and thereby attain the mind-made body, Mano Maya Kaya. Thus, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, will discard the notion of birth, abiding, and disappearance. Said Mahamati, what is meant by the will body, Bhagavan? The Bhagavan replied, it means that one in this body can speedily move unobstructed as he wills, hence the will body, Mahamati. For instance, Mahamati, the will or mind travels unobstructed over mountains, walls, rivers, trees, etc. Many 100,000 yojanas they may be away, when a man recollects the scenes which had previously come into his perception, while his own mind keeps on functioning in his body without the least interruption or hindrance. In the same fashion, Mahamati, the will body in the attainment of the samadhi called Maya-like, and adorned with such marks as the powers, the psychic faculties, and the self-control, will be born in the noble paths and assemblies, moving about as freely as he wishes, as he recalls his original vows and worlds in order to bring all beings to maturity. Then, Mahamati, what is meant by the Bodhisattva Mahasattva having a good insight into the non-existence of external objects? It means, Mahamati, that all things are like unto a mirage, a dream, a hairnet, and seeing that all things are here essentially because of our attachment to the habit energy of discrimination which has been maturing since beginningless time on account of false imagination and erroneous speculation, the Bodhisattvas will seek after the attainment of self-realization by their noble wisdom. Mahamati, furnished with these four things, Bodhisattva Mahasattvas become great yogins. Therefore, in these, Mahamati, you should exercise yourself. At that time, Mahamati again made a request of the Bhagavan. Pray tell me, Bhagavan, about the causation of all things, whereby I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas can see into the nature of causation, and by getting rid of the discrimination which issues in the philosophical views of eternalism and nihilism, we may no more discriminate as to the gradual or simultaneous rising of all things. Replied the Bhagavan, Mahamati, there are two factors of causation by which all things come into existence, external and inner. Mahamati, the external factors are a lump of clay, a stick, a wheel, thread, water, a worker, and his labor, the combination of all of which produces a jar, and with the jar, Mahamati, which is made of a lump of clay, or a piece of cloth made of thread, or a matting made of fragrant grass, or the sprout growing out of a seed, or fresh butter which is produced from sour milk by a man churning it with his own labor, so it is, Mahamati, with all things which, governed by external causes, appear one after another in continuous succession. As regards the inner factors of causation, Mahamati, they are of such kind as ignorance, desire, and causation. Mahamati, they are of such kind as ignorance, desire, and action, which make up our idea of causation. Both of these, Mahamati, born of these, Mahamati, there is the manifestation of the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas. They are not separable realities, but discriminated as such by the ignorant. Now, Mahamati, there are 6 causes. 1. Possibility cause. 2. Dependence cause. 3. Objectivity cause. 4. Agency cause. 5. Manifesting cause. And 6. Indifference cause. The possibility cause means, Mahamati, that when a cause comes to be, becomes effective, there is the rising of things inner and outer. The dependence cause means, Mahamati, that when conditions to be become effective, there is the rising of the skandha seeds, etc., inner and outer. Further, the objectivity cause means, Mahamati, that bound by the objective world, the vijnana, keeps up its continuous activity. Again, Mahamati, the agency cause means that, like a sovereign king, a cause invested with supreme authority asserts itself. Again, the manifesting cause means that when the discriminating faculty rises, as the result, it reveals the individual marks as a lamp does forms, etc. Lastly, the indifference cause means that when there is a dissolution, the power of combination discontinues and there rises a state of non-discrimination. These, Mahamati, are the outcome of discrimination carried on by the ignorant and simple-minded, and there is no gradual nor simultaneous rising of existence. Why? Because, Mahamati, if there is a simultaneous rising of existence, there would be no distinction between cause and effect, and there would be nothing to characterize a cause as such. If a gradual rising is admitted, there is no substance that holds together individual signs which make gradual rising impossible. While a child is not yet born, Mahamati, the term father has no significance. The logician argues that there is that which is born and that which gives birth by the mutual functioning of such causal factors as cause, subsistence, continuity, acceleration, and others, and they conclude that there is a gradual rising of existence. But, Mahamati, this gradual rising does not obtain except by reason of their attachment to the notion of self-nature. When the ideas of body, property, and abode are cherished in what is nothing but the manifestation of mind itself, the external world is perceived under the aspects of individuality and generality which, however, are not realities. and therefore, Mahamati, neither a gradual nor a simultaneous rising of things is possible. It is only when the Vijnana evolves by reason of discrimination, which discriminates the manifestation of mind itself, that existence is said to come into view. For this reason, Mahamati, you must strive to get rid of notions of gradation and simultaneity in the combination of the causal activities. Thus it is said, nothing whatever is born or ceases to exist by reason of causation. When causation is discriminated, there is birth and cessation. It is not to keep off the idea of birth and disappearance which takes place in causation. It is to keep off the wrong imagination as to causation, which is cherished by the ignorant. The being and non-being of things subject to causation has no reality. The triple world owes its existence to the mind put into confusion by reason of habit energy. Not ever being in existence, what things are there that are born? But in causation nothing is lost. When effect-producing objects, samskrita, are regarded as like unto a barren woman's child or a flower in the sky, one perceives that grasping subject and grasped object are in error and desists from committing the same error. There is nothing that is to be born, nor is there anything that has been born. Even causation is not. It is because of worldly usage that things are talked of as existing. At that moment again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. Pray tell me, Bhagavan, about the teaching known as the essence of discrimination as regards words, whereby, Bhagavan, I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, comprehending and becoming well acquainted with the essence of discrimination as regards words, will be thoroughly informed of the signification of two things, expression and expressed, and thereby immediately attaining supreme enlightenment, will explain the signification of these two things, expression and expressed, for the purification of all beings. Replied the Bhagavan, then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well, for I will tell you about it. Well done, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and listened to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him. There are, Mahamati, 4 kinds of word discrimination. They are 1. Words denoting individual marks. 2. Dream words. 3. Words growing out of the attachment to erroneous speculations and discriminations. And 4. Words growing out of the discrimination that knows no beginning. Now, Mahamati, the words denoting individual marks rise from discriminating forms and characteristic signs as real in themselves and becoming attached to them. The dream words, Mahamati, rise from the unreal surroundings which reveal themselves before the mind when it recollects its previous experience. The words growing out of the attachment to erroneous speculations and discriminations, Mahamati, rise from recollecting deeds once previously committed. The words growing out of the discrimination that has been functioning since beginningless time, Mahamati, rise from the habit energy whose seeds have been growing out of the clinging to erroneous speculations and false imaginations since beginningless time. I say, Mahamati, these are the 4 features of word discrimination, which is the answer to your question. At that time again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, requested of the Bhagavan to speak on this subject. Pray tell me again, Bhagavan, about the conditions whereby the word discrimination manifests itself. Where, whence, how, and by whom do words indicating discrimination take place among the people? Said the Bhagavan, Mahamati, the word discrimination goes on taking place by the coordination of the head, chest, nose, throat, palate, lips, tongue, and teeth. Said Mahamati, again, Bhagavan, are words to be considered different, anya, or not different, ananya, from discrimination? Replied the Bhagavan, Mahamati, they are neither different nor not different. Why? Because words rise, Mahamati, with discrimination as their cause. If, Mahamati, words are different from discrimination, they cannot have it for a cause. Then if they are not different, words cannot express the sense which they do. Therefore, words and discrimination are neither different nor not different. Then Mahamati said, again, Bhagavan, are words themselves the highest reality, or is what is expressed in words the highest reality? The Bhagavan replied, Mahamati, words are not the highest reality, nor is what is expressed in words the highest reality. Why? Because the highest reality is an exalted state of bliss, and as it cannot be entered into by mere statements regarding it, words are not the highest reality. Mahamati, the highest reality, is to be attained by the inner realization of noble wisdom. It is not a state of word discrimination. Therefore, discrimination does not express the highest reality. And then Mahamati, words are subject to birth and destruction. They are unsteady, mutually conditioning, and are produced by the law of causation. And again, Mahamati, what is mutually conditioning and produced by the law of causation cannot express the highest reality, because the indications pointing to the distinction between self and not self are non-existent. Mahamati, words are these indications and do not express the highest reality. Further, Mahamati, word discrimination cannot express the highest reality, for external objects with their multitudinous individual marks are non-existent, and only appear before us as something revealed out of mind itself. Therefore, Mahamati, you must try to keep yourself away from the various forms of word discrimination. Thus it is said, in all things there is no self-nature, words too are devoid of reality. As the ignorant understand not what is meant by emptiness, yes, by emptiness they wander about. In all things there is no self-nature. They are mere words of people. That which is discriminated has no reality. Even nirvana is like a dream. Nothing is seen to be in transmigration, nor does anything ever enter into nirvana. As a king or a wealthy householder, giving his children various clay-made animals, pleases them and makes them play with the toys, but later gives them real ones, so I too, making use of various forms and images of things, instruct my sons. But the limit of reality, Buddhakoti, can only be realized within oneself. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, again said this to the Bhagavan. Pray tell me, Bhagavan, about the attainment of self-realization by noble wisdom, which does not belong to the path and the usage of the philosophers, which is devoid of all such predicates as being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity, which has nothing to do with the false imagination, nor with individuality and generality, which manifests itself as the truth of highest reality, which, going up continuously by degrees the stages of purification, enters upon the stage of Tathagatahood, which, because of the original vows, unattended by any striving, will perform its works in infinite worlds like a gem reflecting a variety of colors, and which is manifested when one perceives how the signs of individuation rise in all things as one realizes the course and realm of what is seen of mind itself, and thereby I and other bodhisattva mahasattvas are enabled to survey things from the point of view which is not hampered by marks of individuality and generality, nor by anything of the false imagination, and may quickly attain supreme enlightenment and enable all beings to achieve the perfection of all their virtues. Replied the Bhagavan, well done, Mahamati, and again, well done indeed, Mahamati. Because of your compassion for the world, for the benefit of many people, for the happiness of many people, for the welfare, benefit, happiness of many people, both of celestial beings and humankind, Mahamati, you present yourself before me and make this request. Therefore, Mahamati, listen well and truly and reflect, for I will tell you. Assuredly, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him, Mahamati, since the ignorant and the simple-minded, not knowing that the world is what is seen of mind itself, cling to the multitudinousness of external objects, cling to the notions of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity, as being characterized by self-nature which rises from discrimination based on habit energy. They are addicted to false imaginings. Mahamati, it is like a mirage in which the springs are seen as if they were real. They are imagined so by the animals who, thirsty from the heat of the season, would run after them. Not knowing that the springs are their own mental hallucinations, the animals do not realize that there are no such springs. In the same way, Mahamati, the ignorant and simple-minded, with their minds impressed by various erroneous speculations and discriminations since beginningless time, with their minds burning with the fire of greed, anger, and folly, delighted in a world of multitudinous forms, with their thoughts saturated with the ideas of birth, destruction, and subsistence, not understanding well what is meant by existent and non-existent, by inner and outer, The ignorant and simple-minded fall into the way of grasping at oneness and otherness, being and non-being. Mahamati, it is like the city of the Gandharvas, which is the unwitted take for a real city, though it is not so in fact. This city appears in essence owing to their attachment to the memory of a city preserved in seed from beginningless time. This city is thus neither existent nor non-existent. In the same way, Mahamati, clinging to the memory, vasana, of erroneous speculations and doctrines since beginningless time, they hold fast to ideas such as oneness and otherness, being and non-being, and their thoughts are not at all clear about what is seen of mind only. Mahamati, it is like a man who, dreaming in his sleep of a country variously filled with women, men, elephants, horses, cars, pedestrians, villages, towns, hamlets, cows, buffaloes, mansions, woods, mountains, rivers, and lakes, enters into its inner apartments and is awakened. While awakened thus, he recollects the city and its inner apartments. What do you think, Mahamati? Is this person to be regarded as wise who is recollecting the various unrealities he has seen in his dream? Said Mahamati, indeed he is not, Bhagavan.